5, we're all, 10 past 5 rather, we're always lamenting the lack of locally manufactured items here in Australia, and everything is made somewhere else. You know, you get to the point where you reckon if you're in Beijing, you'd go and you'd find on the back of everything made just around the corner from here, because everything seems to be made in China, nothing made here. But when it comes to Defence Force expenditure, it is, I would have thought, the number one job of a federal government to worry about our national security. And in order to have enough people with the ability to make things, just in case we're isolated somewhere down the track if there was some defence emergency, we've got to be able to make things. Perhaps that's the one reason why we need a car industry, why we celebrate Volvo Mac and their years out at Wacol, because at least we're making something there. The only place left that makes vehicles anywhere in Queensland. But when we look at where things were 5 years ago and where things are now, I don't know about you, but I shake my head and wonder. In 2007, 80% of defence contracts were being awarded to Australian defence industry. Now only 53% of them are being awarded locally. A cumulative loss to Australia's economic activity, it's claimed, of $8 billion. That's B. $8 billion. I just don't understand. It's counterintuitive. It's wrong. It's against the national interest on so many fronts. Federal member for Fatton, Stuart, he's the Shadow Minister for Defence, Science, Technology and Personnel. He joins us. Well, Mr. Robert, this is just a disgrace.
Oh, it's appalling. And what makes it worse, these aren't my figures, these aren't the figures from the opposition. This is from the Australian Business Defence Industry Unit, which actually looks at this. They've analysed 85,000 contracts. It's a fair amount of data, and this is the hard numbers they've come up with. It is disgraceful.
Now, look, I'm an economic rationalist because the opposite to being an economic rationalist is to be an irrationalist as far as I'm concerned. But the rationale is wrong if the government thinks they're getting best bang for the buck by buying it offshore.
Oh, no question about it. The government seems to take the easy option every time, which is buy straight from the Americans, with some recent purchases, of course, in Europe. And we've seen the local defence industry contract by 30% over the last 5 years. Again, industry figures, 29,000 jobs down to 24,000 jobs. And of course, the government predicted that it would rise to 34,000 more. They're 10,000 off the mark because of this.
We haven't been too good, though, at building some things. I mean, let's look at submarines and various boats, small boats, frigates and so forth. We've had problems all over the place.
I think everyone has problems when it comes to military technology because you're working in such cutting-edge technological space. But what we can't do, Gary, is say to Australian industry, to say to hard-working Australian sons and daughters, sorry, you're not good enough to make high-end stuff. If we're serious about having a manufacturing industry, we've lost 109,000 jobs in the last 5 years in that industry, then we need to be serious about the high-tech, hardened, sophisticated defence type of work.
I mean, isn't it fair to say that if you invest $1 in defence, the capacity, the capability improves, then that rubs off on all industry?
No question about it. The skills and knowledge and experience that is gained in the back of the defence industry helps everyone else. It also puts a viable defence export industry up, because we are seen, when we put together, or put our minds together, on building defence equipment, it is first class. Look at the Bushmaster. We've had over 70 of them blown up in Afghanistan by improvised explosive devices. It's the only armoured fighting vehicle in the world where no one has died in combat. That is a first-rate vehicle made in Australia.
Yeah, and indeed, not only made in Australia, but service in Australia around Acacia Ridge and up in other places through Queensland, where we actually see the Bushmasters on the road between service.
If you look at, for example, the Anzac-class frigates this country built, something like 3,600 Australian companies were involved in building that, and 83% of that entire ship was built in Australia. We can do it. It just requires the minister to say, I want to see the cheapest quote, I want to see the dearest quote, I want to see an Australian quote. I want to know what the impact is on Australia. I want to see how many Australian jobs are going to be created by this company bidding for this work. It actually requires him to do his job.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is an easy and cheap shot for an opposition to make, because in government, surely the Howard government also went with the cheapest and the best. Again, it's back to the rationale if you're going to be an economic rationalist.
Although, Gary, the government's own figures, the Australian defence industry's own figures show under the Howard years, 80% of contracts went to Australian companies. Under Labor, 53%. It's a bit hard to argue with that.
Yeah, well, I accept that, but I just put the case space that it's easy to criticise, it's now to do. I mean, the difference in the way you do it is really critical, I think, Stu, Robert.
Oh, it is. And you'll see as we get closer to the election, we'll have an industry component to our defence policy. We'll outline the changes and the differences we'll make. But it's going to start with the Minister of Defence actually taking an active interest in Australian defence industry. It's going to require the Minister to actually understand how the industry works, the input it actually makes into the Australian economy, and the great thing it does for jobs.
But can we afford to have things made here in Australia? We've got a more expensive workforce, and many, therefore, on basic economics, we're making shopping trolleys in China. We don't even make those sorts of things necessarily always here.
There's a big difference between the shopping trolley they go in.
No, there is, but I'm just simply making a simplistic thing. Well, although shopping trolleys are probably themselves a defensive or offensive device as well. But I'm just saying, if you can't make those things at a competitive price, how can we make big things?
Oh, because a phased array radar for an ANZ-class frigate is a pretty sophisticated bit of equipment, and price is not the only determinant. But also, for every one job you employ in defence industry, that is down the chain one less bloke or lady on the dole. And you can price these things, you can factor these things in how you actually negotiate your tenders and your work. There is a direct benefit to the Australian economy from employing Australians, and there's certainly a strategic benefit in actually building our defence industry network.
And I would have thought the one other point, I guess, is that we run the risk of making Australian industries lazy if they know they're going to get a premium of consideration by an Australian government.
As long as industry is required to compete, so they know they have to compete, they know the Minister's going to look at whatever the cheapest tender, he's going to look at what the dearest tender is, he's going to look at a range of options in terms of what people are bringing forward to the table to bid for equipment. That'll keep Australian industry honest. But we need to be able to recognise that every job we create in Australia has a net and tangible benefit to the nation. And we can't allow our defence industry to stagnate. It may be the last area of really specialised, high-tech, sophisticated manufacturing engineering that we're currently doing.
Either way, it's worth the discussion. Thanks for letting me put you through your paces. Stuart, Robert, good to talk to you. He's the Federal Member for FAT and Shadow Minister for Defence Science and Technology and Personnel. Derek at Murray, you sort of feel a bit the same as me. We've got to be able to do it ourselves.